It's time to rank the Jethro Tull albums now that they have a new album out called Rökflöte. I did a ranking last year. It's time for an update. I will be ranking 22 studio albums, excluding any live albums, compilations. I'm not including the Christmas album. So we have a lot to get through, so this will be from worst to best. Let me get started. At number 22 is Under Wraps from 1984, released September 7th that year. This is very different. It's art rock, electronic rock, synth pop. It's bad. They completely abandoned their sound for like this 80s new wave sound, and it just doesn't work for this band. The only decent song is Lap of Luxury. That sounds like something you would hear in an 80s John Hughes movie. The song European Legacy and Nobody's Cry tried to incorporate a little bit of that classic sound, but it's just not as good. There are a lot of weird songs like Radio Free in Moscow and a lot of 80s new wave throwaway, so overall not a good album. Number 21 is J-Tull Dot Com, released on August 23rd, 1999. This is a mixture of like everything they've done: progressive rock, hard rock, folk rock, some of that world music that they did on Roots to Branches. It's released on Papillon Varese Sande Band label. Not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Produced by Ian Anderson. It's okay. I think they created it to let everyone know they have a website, and it makes it sound dated in itself. They were going for a similar style as Roots to Branches, but that album is a lot better. That one's going to be ranked a lot higher. The album opened a spiral, a mixture of that classic Jethro Tull and has some harder rocking elements. .com is more laid back, jazzy type of song. Overall, it's not great, but it's at number 21. At number 20, I have Catfish Rising, released on September 10th, 1991 in the US and September 23rd in the UK. This is, again, like what they're doing is like everything they've been doing up until that point: some progressive rock, some hard rock, and a little bit more of that blues rock. Released on the Crest label and produced by Jethro Tull. It's not too bad. I think they were going for that blues rock sound. The first song, This Is Not Love, reminds me of like 80s glam metal, like a band like Whitesnake. But after that, the album is a lot more laid back. So we have Roll Your Own, kind of like a bluegrass type of song. Sparrow on the Schoolyard Wall, more of that classic Jethro Tull sound. It's not too bad. Not as good as the two preceding it, but it's okay. At number 19, this might be a little controversial, but I have A from 1980, released on August 29th, 1980. This is electronic rock, progressive rock, and folk rock. Released on Crest and produced by Ian Anderson and Robin Black. So I think this is where the band starts to lose me for the next few albums. It's not too bad. They introduce some electronic music, and it makes the album sound very dated. The opening track, Crossfire, this is pretty cool. It sounds like Jethro Tull playing yacht rock. Flying Dale Flyers, not too bad. A mixture of that folk rock with some electronic keyboards. Black Sundays, one of the longer tracks, not too bad. It's progressive rock mixed with electronics. Protect and Survive is kind of closer to that classic Jethro Tull sound, and Batteries Not Included is just very 80s sounding. Overall, not too bad, but I think the band did go downhill for a few more years after this album. And bringing us to number 18, which is Broadsword and the Beast from 1982. I thought this one was like a little better. Released April 10th, 1982 and April 19th, 1982 in the UK and US. This is basically a mix of everything like they've been doing. They still have some of that electronic music on it, but they have like their progressive rock, the hard rock, the folk rock, everything that they've been doing. Released on the Crest label and produced by Paul Samuel Smith. I think it's pretty good. It's very mixed up. It's the opening track I like, Beastie. It's kind of pretty cool, but it's very 80s. It sounds like an intro to an 80s horror movie. But then it can have some more synth rock on Clasp. Falling on Hard Times is more of that classic folk rock sound. They have a soft ballad, Flying Colors. Then the opening track to side 2 is Broadsword. That's very epic with an 80s sound. I like that one. Probably the best song on the album. And Watching Me, Watching You sounds very dated, but it's okay. This album is just, it's not too bad. At number 17, I have Rock Island, released on August 21st, 1989. This is more of a progressive rock and hard rock album released on the Chrysalis label, produced by Jethro Tull. This is a follow-up to Crest of a Knave, which was better, but it still has that classic rock and hard rock sound. I think the best song is the opening song, Kissing Willie. It has that 80s hard rock influence, but still maintains that classic Jethro Tull sound. Next song, Rattlesnake Trail, has some really good guitar playing by Martin Barr. You hear the hard rock influence on that one. And the third song, Ears of Tin, more of that Jethro Tull folk rock sound. And then later on in the album, there's an 8-minute track called The Whalers' Dues. It's pretty cool, more of that progressive rock sound. So this one, they do mix it up a little. It's pretty good. At number 16, I have their debut. This was from 1968, released on October 25th. This was kind of before the band knew what they were doing. It was more blues rock, jazz fusion, and folk rock. It was released on the Island label in the UK and reprised in the US, and produced by Terry Ellis and Jethro Tull. So it's still pretty good. I like My Sunday Feeling. That one kind of has the same type of sound that they would continue on the next few albums. There's more like blues on here. Someday the Sun Won't Shine for You. And then they have Beggar's Farm. That one's another one that kind of sounds a little more like classic Tull. I also like Dharma for One. It's more classic, and A Song for Jeffrey, more of that folk rock sound. This was actually before Martin Barr was in the band, and he would be on like most of their albums, except for like the last couple ones. So that's at number 16. At number 15, I have Crest of a Knave from 1987. This was released on September 11th in 1987. This is their hard rock album. There's also elements of progressive rock here as well. Released on Chrysalis, produced by Jethro Tull. Really good comeback. They did like a lot of like new wave albums in the 80s, and they kind of went back to their rock roots. They won Best Hard Rock Grammy, beating out Metallica, but it's good. It's not metal. I mean, not talking about that whole Grammy thing, but it's a decent album. The opening track, Steel Monkey, is really good. I like that one a lot. It has that 80s hard rock influence. I like the guitar playing. I like Farm on the Freeway. That's a really good song, more laid back, more acoustic and flutes. And the song Budapest is like a 10-minute, like, I guess, relaxing type of song. Overall, just a very good album. And it was like from the 80s. That wasn't really their best decade, but I think this one was pretty good. At number 14, I have the Zealot Gene from 2022, released on January 28th of last year. Released on Inside Out label and produced by Ian Anderson. So this album came out 19 years after the Christmas album. A lot had gone on during that time. A lot of people call this an Ian Anderson solo album. And it basically had an entirely new lineup. It's like the same band he had been using for his solo albums, which he had been releasing like over those past 19 years when Jethro Tull was inactive. So a lot of people were just saying he just like used the Jethro Tull name. But with that being said, I like this album a lot. I understand that after all this time his voice is not the same as it was before, but I enjoy the songs. I think I had it ranked higher last time, but after some time it did drop a little bit. But I still like the song. I go back to it a lot. My favorite songs: Miss Tibbetts, Shoshana Sleeping, Baron Beth, Wild Desert John, Where Did Saturday Go? I don't know. I like the album, so that's all I can say. And at number 13, we have the new one, Rökflöte, released on April 21st of 2023. Released on Inside Out Music, produced by Ian Anderson. And this one, I just did a full review for it. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it's better than the Zealot Gene. It's a return to that classic sound. I hear influences from like Stand Up and Thick as a Brick, Songs from the Wood. I mean, it has like that type of sound. There's the progressive side and then the folk rock side. A lot of flute playing. I have a full review of this. I'm going to link it at the end of this video, so I'm not going to talk about too much in detail, but if you want to know where the new one ranks, it's right here at number 13. At number 12, I have Stormwatch from 1979, released on September 14th of that year. on the Chrysalis label, produced by Ian Anderson and Robin Black. So in the 70s, they did this folk rock trilogy, and this is, I guess, the weakest of those 3 albums. It's not too bad. I mean, I still have it ranked fairly high, but it's not one I go back to as often as the other, like, 70s albums. But the album opener, North Sea Oil, this is just classic Jethro Tull sound. Then Orion, it's a decent follow-up with really cool vocals in the intro, more of that progressive rock side. They have a 9-minute epic called Dark Ages. It's probably one of their most progressive songs that they have played in like a long time at that point in time. And I like it. They have some hard rock here. They have some like heavy guitar riffs on that one song, Dark Ages. I also like Warm Sporin. It's more like a funk sound, kind of like a little of that late 70s influence, I guess. And Something's on the Move is more of that hard rock sound. So overall, not a bad album, just the other one's a lot better. At number 11, this one might be a surprise, Roots to Branches from 1995. This was released on September 4th in the UK and September 12th in the US. This is Jethro Tull doing like everything and mixing in some like world music, but I think they like did it like really good. So released on the Chrysalis label, produced by Ian Anderson, and it's just one I out of all of their like later day albums, this is like my favorite, and it's just one I go back to a lot. There's lots of Middle Eastern influences, and you don't hear a lot of hard rock guitar playing as you did on like the last few albums. It's more, I think the word to say is like worldly. There's lots of good songs. My favorite song is definitely called At Last Forever. Just a beautiful song and one of the best songs from the 90s. And overall, just a really good album. Now we're in the top 10. This is going to be most of their like classic stuff. So number 10, Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die, released on April 23rd, 1976 in the UK, May 17th, 1976 in the US. On the Chrysalis label, produced by Ian Anderson. It's a concept album. It's about like this aging rocker. He's depressed and the whole musical landscape has changed, and there's a whole story behind it. I'm not going to go into it. It's a decent album. I like the opener, Quiz Kid. Kind of some cool hard rock guitar riffs and progressive rock moments. The title track, very memorable. They have a music video for that one. So overall, this album has lots of different elements, like everything that Jethro Tull has been doing like up until that time. Everything from the progressive to the folk, to the hard rock, to the blues. It's all mixed. It's all part of a concept album, so it's pretty good. And number 9 is Minstrel in the Gallery from 1975, released on September 5th in the UK, September 8th in the US. This it's an album I like a lot. I like the first song a lot, like the title track. Some like the best guitar playing by Martin Barre. And then the other song that's like really good is Baker Street Muse. It's a 16-minute track, and then it has different parts. Like some parts are more like acoustic, some parts are more like electric, and it's a really cool song. Some of the heaviest stuff, and then a lot of their like laid back stuff. So that's why I like this one a lot. This is number 9. Number 8 is War Child from 1974, released on October 14th in the US and October 26th in the UK. This one is very good. Released on Chrysalis label, produced by Ian Anderson and Terry Ellis. So it has 2 of my favorite Jethro Tull songs of all time, Skating Away and Bungle in the Jungle. The rest of the album is still very good. Not as good as those like 2 singles, but it's a solid album. At number 7 is A Passion Play from 1973, released on July 13th in the UK, July 23rd in the US. This is their most proggy album, their most progressive rock album, I guess you can call it that. Released on the Chrysalis album and produced by Ian Anderson and Terry Ellis. It's an album that is loved by die-hard fans. If you're a newcomer to the band, it might be kind of harder to digest. They have lots of complex arrangements, so it's not really for like a casual listener, but if you're like a prog fan, I think you can love it. I still like it a lot. I have it ranked high at number 7, so I like pretty much all the songs, sorry. The album is like basically 4 songs divided into act, and each act has like 3 or 4 songs like mixed into them. So I like the silver chord. There's some cool acoustic rock parts. Ian Anderson's vocals are very good on that one. I like Memory Bank. That one's an acoustic rock song with lots of progressive rock elements and time signature changes. Critique Oblique is very good. I like the darker tone and electric guitar riffs. The most recognizable song is Overseer Overture. Really good acoustic rock song. I struggle with a part of the album called The Story of the Hare Who Lost His Spectacles. It's 4 minutes. It seems to ruin the flow of the album, but that's my only negative comment about this, because otherwise it's pretty much like a prog rock masterpiece. So I have it at number 7. And number 6 is Benefit from 1970, released on April 20th. This is them kind of finding more of that like hard rock sound. This one came out right before Aqualung, so this is like right before they got big. And released on Chrysalis and Island label, and produced by Ian Anderson and Terry Ellis. This one, really good album. My favorite song is Teacher. That was only on the US version. And my other favorite song is Witch's Promise, which is actually only a bonus track. But other than those songs, the album is very good. I think not as good as the one before it, Stand Up. That's going to be up a lot higher. But we got some good songs. With You There to Help Me, that one's like a little darker. Nothing to Say, that's some cool like folk rock guitar riffs. And For Michael Collins, Jeffrey and Me, that's a soft acoustic song. Probably my favorite cut, other than the aforementioned ones, To Cry You a Song. Really cool guitar riffs and one of the heavier tracks. And the final song, Sasity, You're a Woman, that's pretty good. That one's more like prog rock with some organ playing. So overall, I think this is like a really good album. And at number 5, Heavy Horses from 1978, released on April 10th. I just did a review of this as well. This is part of that folk rock trio, and I think this one is just very good. And released on Chrysalis, produced by Ian Anderson. And it's a solid album. I like Moths. That's like one of my favorite songs from Jethro Tull, and my favorite from the album. I also like the title track. That one's really good. It's longer. It's a prog rock song. But there's some other good songs like Weathercock, that's more like folk rock with acoustic guitars, and really decent follow-up to Songs from the Wood, which will be up a little higher, but still a very good album. At number 4, I have Thick as a Brick from 1972, released on March 3rd. This is their progressive rock album, produced by Ian Anderson and Terry Ellis. It's basically 2 long songs on each side of the record, but for the digital version, they divided it into like the different songs. So the album opens with an acoustic song called Really Don't Mind. And then all the songs after that have all different like twists and turns. Like The Poet and the Painter is more like this theatrical feel. Kind of mixes Ian Anderson's flute playing with a progressive rock. The rest of the album is very good. It's just a prog rock album. They're kind of meant for it to be a joke. It's kind of like a satire of what was going on at the time. They had the whole like newspaper thing in the album, but definitely a solid album. It still holds up today, and I have it at number 4. At number 3, I have Songs from the Wood, released on February 11, 1977. This is the best of that trilogy I've been talking about throughout this video. Released on Chrysalis and produced by Ian Anderson. It's a solid album. So we have Jack and the Green, just classic Jethro Tull with acoustic guitars and flutes. Cup of Wonders, a little more upbeat with a great melody. Hunting Girl is a bigger sound, more of those prog rock arrangements and electric guitar riffs. Ring Out Solstice Bells, another one they re-recorded for their Christmas album. And probably my favorite song on the album is called The Whistler, just this classic sound. So definitely a solid album. Now at number 2 and number 1, you probably knew what was coming. So Aqualung is just an awesome album. You know, this is their big one. It's a masterpiece. Cross-Eyed Mary, the title track. You got Mother Goose, Wandering Aloud, Hymn 43. This is just a solid album. And Stand Up, another solid album. It's New Day Yesterday. You got this is when Martin Barr came in into the band. So they have that song Bori, that J.S. Bach cover. Nothing is Easy, Look to the Sun. This one, on Stand Up, they kind of mix like everything of that hard rock, folk rock, blues rock, and progressive rock. And on Aqualung, it's more of a prog rock, hard rock, and like a folk rock sound. Aqualung is more, I guess, like a harder rocking album. That Stand Up is more of an album where they kind of like just like, you know, this is what they're doing. They kind of like found their sound and they knew what they were doing. So how am I going to rank them? I'm going to rank them number 2, Stand Up, and my number 1 is going to be Aqualung. So that is all 22 Jethro Tull albums ranked. If you like, post your ranking in the comments. I'd be interested in seeing where your albums fall. And if you have anything else to say about this ranking, because it's all subjective. Anyway, here's that Rökflöte ranking. I have it ranked right here, posted right here, and see you in the next.